Hello, everybody. Just seeing names and faces join in on our webinar today. The clock has struck noon, so we're going to go ahead and get started. We have a lot of great information to share. If you are looking for the information session about the Sewer Extension South project, you are in the right place. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Colleen Dane, and my role today is to help facilitate the session and keep us moving smoothly through the presentation and the Q&A session that will follow. Our goal today with this webinar is to provide you with an update about planning for the community sewer service in Royston and Union Bay and some of the details that are coming together so far. We want to share information about the process and next steps in that process and to give an opportunity to you to ask questions of the project team. We have a few presenters on hand here today who are going to be able to provide the overview and help answer those questions for you. First, we have James Warren, the Chief Administrative Officer for the CVRD. We have Derry Monteith, the Manager of Liquid Waste Planning for the CVRD. We have Ron Frank joining us on behalf of the Comox First Nation today. And we also have some other people who are here to help answer questions, including Mark Hall from Island Health, Area A Director Daniel Arbour, our Sewage Commission Chair Doug Hillian, and the Chair of the CVRD Board, Director Will Cole-Hamilton. We also have a number of other folks on the call who have a lot of great information and all the expertise to be able to address anything that's on your mind. So we have the experts here in the room today, and we encourage you to ask any questions that you have. I expect that the presentation will take about 30 minutes, and then we'll open it up to the Q&A. And before we jump into that piece, there's just a couple housekeeping items I'm going to run over with you all. The first is that using this webinar format, we collect questions using the Q&A tool. So you can find that in the bottom black bar of your Zoom screen. It's a little double dialogue window that says Q&A. And if you pop it open, a new white screen will open up, and that's where you can type in your question and post it for us to see. You can make your question anonymous by clicking the box beside the question window. And if someone has asked a question that you think is important, you can upvote it as well. And that helps us understand if there's a question or a topic area that's of particular importance for people on the webinar today. We do hope to and intend to get to every question today, but should we run out of time, we will follow up with the information to address any of the questions that are left outstanding. So I encourage you to add your questions to that Q&A, even if we're coming to the end of our time together. You may have heard as you were joining the webinar that this webinar is being recorded today, and it will be posted to the CVRD's website, either for review again by you or for sharing with others who weren't able to join us this afternoon. And finally, if you're having any technical hiccups today, please post your question in the chat. So that's another one of the icons in the bottom black bar of your Zoom screen beside the Q&A. And we will do our best to help from a distance in helping to troubleshoot for you so that you can hear and listen and participate. So I think with that, we're gonna get rolling. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us today. And with that, I'm going to hand the mic over to James Warren, our CIO for the CVRD. Over to you, James.
Thank you, Colleen, and thank you to everybody for joining us on the call today for an update on the Sewer Extension South project. Before we get started, I would like to acknowledge that we are hosting this today from the unceded traditional territory of the Comox First Nation, the traditional keepers of this land. Comox First Nation is a key partner on this project, which will support development of their lands should treaty be ratified. And we are grateful to have Ron Frank here from the Comox Treaty team to share more information with us about that process. We also have members of the CVRD project team with us to provide updates on all of the things you have asked us about, like how the system will work, and most importantly, how much is it going to cost? We're excited to share all of the important work completed to date, including a summary of the report that will be submitted to the province for approval this spring as part of the Comox Valley Liquid Waste Management Plan. That's the guiding document for regional sewer planning. As you may know, this project is critical to ensuring the environmental protection of Bain Sound and protecting public health. It will also sustainably address planned future growth in Union Bay and the Comox Treaty settlement lands. We'd like to thank you for being here today and for continuing to remain involved as the project progresses. Please don't hesitate to share your feedback or ask questions once we've reached the Q&A stage at the end of the presentation. And with that, I'll pass it over to Derry Monteith, our Manager of Liquid Waste Planning. So Derry, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, James, and hello, everyone. Thanks again for joining. This presentation will be about 30 minutes and will include some information you may have heard before, as well as some important updates. So let's start with an overview of the proposed expanded regional system. The expanded system would see the addition of 3 main components: a 13-kilometer-long force main extending from Union Bay to the Courtenay Pump Station, neighborhood collection systems, and a number of pump stations. As previously communicated, the project will be implemented in phases. Phase 1A is proposed to include approximately 460 properties in the historic core areas of Royston and Union Bay, and Phase 1B will expand servicing to additional portions of the Royston area, as well as the Kilmarnock neighborhood. Phase 1A will also see the installation of both the Union Bay and Royston pump stations, with the Kilmarnock pump station being installed in Phase 1B. So we're here today to share updates on the project following public feedback and further investigation that has happened on the project since last June. Some of these updates include collection system design, project costs, a proposed septic deferral program, and proposed septic regulatory program. And I will expand on the details of these updates in upcoming slides. If you're interested in learning more about what we heard from the community at the last public events in June, you can read the What We Heard report on the project webpage. It details all the feedback from community members and how this feedback was used. So before we dive into specific project updates, I'm just going to outline where we're at in the planning process and what's going to happen next. So first, a draft report summarizing the proposed Sewer Extension South project and all public feedback will be considered by the Public and Technical Advisory Committee and Steering Committee this spring. And then the approved draft report will be forwarded on to the province and will be considered as part of the overall regional sewer plan for the Comox Valley. In 2025, the final draft of the regional sewer plan will be shared with the community before it is again submitted to the province for final approval. And at this time, we are estimating construction of Phase 1A to start in 2026 or 2027 and be complete in 2028. And now I will hand over to Ron Frank, speaking on behalf of the Comox First Nation Treaty Team, to speak to how the project will impact the proposed treaty settlement lands should treaty be ratified. Over to you, Ron.
Thank you so much, and it's a pleasure to be here. Welcome to everyone on behalf of Comox First Nation. For those of you who are wondering, I'm not a member of the nation. I have been working with the nation since the 80s in relation to the nation since the 70s, but more recently in the last couple of decades have been the negotiator alongside Mark Stevenson, the Comox chief negotiator, to get us here. I think this slide, if everybody can see it, says most of the salient information, the important information. I'd like to add to that. As many of you know already, the Comox First Nation has been engaged in treaty negotiations for 2.5 decades, 3 decades now, just about 3 decades now. And I can say finally we're getting to a point where ratification of the treaty is on the timeline for 2024, late 2024. So all of this work that was done since 1992, when the first parcels in blue were purchased, are coming to fruition in terms of what is currently called the Southlands development, but to all of us really it's the Union Bay area developments. And the lands that you see there in blue and gold and green are the proposed treaty settlement lands at this time. If the treaty is ratified, it will come into force and effect likely within 2 to 3 years after next fall, winter. So that's kind of the timeline. One of the reasons that Comox is so proud to be part of this initiative with the South Sewer Extension is first and foremost to look after the health and security of all of the people living in the area. That's critical. Secondly, to look after the environment of Baines Sound and this Union Bay area, Union Bay Royston. So we're very proud to be a part of that. And, you know, it says there we're intending to create jobs, promote investment, economic development, build housing, support tourism, encourage investments to benefit the entire Comox Valley. And that's a really important point because Comox takes that responsibility very seriously to look after not just the environment. We all kind of turn to Comox to take that responsibility alongside of all of us, but the responsibility to care for people. And that needs to be made clear. I'm just going to check and see if there's anything else I wanted to add. The reason that Comox hasn't initiated in the more development on treaty settlement lands in the past is not just because we didn't have access to those lands, but the lands that have been offered have been very limited in terms of available services, in particular sewer and water. So this is ground zero for Comox in terms of opportunity to move forward in all the ways I just spoke to. With that said, back to the chair. Facilitator, sorry.
Thank you, Ron, for that. Gary, with that, I'll pass it back to you to move forward with information about phasing.
Thank you, and thanks, Ron. So as introduced earlier, this project is planned to be rolled out in phases, and this is because of the overall scale of the project and is also required to keep per property costs reasonable. So these maps highlight the proposed properties to be included in both Phase 1A and Phase 1B. There hasn't been any changes to project boundaries or phases since June 2023, so these maps are the same as were proposed then. However, that said, the CVRD did receive multiple requests during the 2023 public engagement to consider minor boundary changes and phasing adjustments. And so we are investigating these requests and will consider them where they can be made with little to no overall increase in per property costs. So just to recap the phasing breakdown and timing, Phase 1A will make up the first phase of work with construction expected to be complete in 2028, and Phase 1B will follow. However, the timing of Phase 1B and any future phases after that is currently unknown. Phase 1A will provide really the foundational infrastructure needed for the connection of future phases as these communities grow, and all future connections will benefit from the work undertaken in Phase 1A. Future phases will include those smaller and lower density neighborhoods where servicing is more expensive, including Gartley Point, Spence Road, and the Garvin Road area. Union Bay Estates and Comox First Nation treaty settlement lands will connect to the system as these lands are developed, and timing is to be determined. And as Ron said, Comox participation is dependent on the ratification of treaty. So the plan is to install 2 pump stations in Phase 1A, the Royston Pump Station and Union Bay Pump Station. And then the Kilmarnock pump station would be installed in Phase 1B. Pump station designs and locations remain as reported in June 2023 with no real significant updates to share. We're sharing these maps today just as a refresher on proposed pump station locations, and these locations are all still undergoing review and consideration. In the first map, you see there the proposed location for the Phase 1A Royston pump station, which is at the base of Royston Road on the northwest corner of the Royston Road Marine Drive intersection. The proposed location for this pump station is in the coastal flood zone, and there are ongoing discussions to mitigate potential impacts of coastal flooding with 3 options that are currently under consideration. For the Union Bay pump station, location options are still currently under consideration, and the same goes for the Phase 1B Kilmarnock pump station. And now I will hand it back over to James, who will provide us with an overview of the financing of the project and the cost to homeowners.
Thanks, Terry. And I actually see that Lucy Wacharek, our Chief Financial Officer, has been able to join the call. And so, Lucy, if you're able to take these slides and share some of that information about the financial details, be great. Lucy.
Thank you very much, James. Good afternoon, everybody. We have some updates to share around project costs and the cost to homeowners, which we hope will be a positive update for impacted residents. The project design has been updated from the conceptual design presented to the community in June 2023. It is now at the preliminary design stage, which introduces Class C cost estimates. The Class C estimates resulted in a slight increase in the overall project costs. However, the CBRD can apply additional grant funds, resulting in $200 per year decrease in the annual cost of borrowing for the residents. The total project cost is now $67 million. The majority of that, $46.5 million, is for the regional sewer line and pump stations, and $20.5 million is for the community collection systems. And as shown here, project partners, Comox First Nations and Union Bay Estates, will contribute funds towards the cost of the regional sewer pipe. Grant funds will be split between the cost of the regional sewer pipes and the community collections system. Royston and Union Bay residents will pay $4.2 million towards their share of the pipe and the community collection systems as part of the first phase of the project. And then down the road, when the partners are ready to connect, they will finance their own collection systems. Next slide. Cost estimates for the residents have been updated since the June 2023 period. And as I mentioned, the good news is that this has resulted in $200 per year decrease in the annual cost of borrowing for the residents. As you can see, there are 2 major categories of cost for homeowners anticipated for this project. A, one-time costs that will vary from home to home and are the responsibility of the homeowner. And secondly, ongoing annual costs that will be billed by the province and the CBRD. The one-time costs for homeowners are estimated to be $3,500 to $12,500. And this amount includes the cost for connecting from the home to the new pipe, decommissioning a septic system, and $4,500 that's estimated for the installation of an LPS grinder pump if needed. It's anticipated that approximately 30% of the homes in Phase 1A will require the LPS grinder pump equipment. We've included the one-time cost as a range because this will vary widely between property and your current systems. Annual costs for homeowners are estimated to be $1,750 to $2,150 per household, and this does include the cost of borrowing. This equates to $1,200 to $1,500 annually for 25 years, plus $550 to $650 annually for ongoing operations and maintenance costs. The cost of borrowing will be billed to your will be billed on your provincial property tax bill, and the cost for operations you will see on your quarterly CBRD utility bill. These estimates are based on the preliminary design. That's our Class C cost estimate, and that has an expected accuracy of plus or minus 30%. And we do expect to have our full cost estimates in 2026-27. We understand that there may be questions about these costs, and we're happy to answer them at the end of the session during Q&A. 10. We understand that these added costs may cause hardships for some households, especially in today's economic climate. The CVRD septic deferral program could provide financial relief to property owners who are eligible. The proposed septic deferral program will allow homeowners to postpone sewer operating costs for 5 years if they have a newly installed septic system. This means you could be eligible if you have a type 2 or a type 3 septic system aged less than 5 years at the time of the required sewer connection. The anticipated sewer connection time is around 2028. If you are eligible for the program, you could defer the sewer operating costs, and that was the estimate of $550 to $650 per year, and private property connection expenses and septic decommission expenses, and that was estimated at $3,500 to $12,500. The deferral period proposed is 5 years or until your property is sold. And the eligible homeowners would have to apply to the CVRD for this program. The CVRD septic deferral program does not include deferral of borrowing costs on your annual provincial tax bill, and that was the estimate of $1,200 to $1,500 a year. Eligible homeowners can always consider the provincial property tax deferral program for these annual costs. And to learn about those options, visit the website shown here on the site, on this slide. Slide 11. For Royston and Union Bay, residents can expect additional residential property taxes and user fee increases in the coming years, and we want you to be prepared for what's to come. These increases are in response to the needs of these communities and will deliver on fundamental community services. The new projects that will result in annual tax escalations by 2027 are highlighted here on this slide. We would like to point out that the CVRD will aim to stagger delivery of new services to have gradual increases over time layered within our financial plan. As well, the CVRD is planning increased communications to affected households well in advance to help residents prepare for managing these added expenditures. If you're interested in learning more about these anticipated costs for the South region, there is a backgrounder available on this topic on the project website. And now I'll hand it back to Derry to speak to you about the draft addendum report.
Thank you, Lucy. So now I'm going to discuss one of the more important updates along with costs that we're sharing with you today, and that is the draft addendum report. So as mentioned earlier, the Sewer Extension South project will be reviewed as part of the Regional Sewer Plan, and a report summarizing the project planning work to date will be submitted to the province in spring 2024, and this is the draft addendum report. Upon provincial review, this addendum will be included as part of the Regional Sewer Plan that is expected to receive provincial approval in 2026. The report includes 7 sections that summarize the work completed so far on the project and is really a great resource for anybody wanting to do a bit of a deeper dive into the project details. We've also included a summary of the report because it is quite lengthy. So if you're interested in reading more, you can find both the summary and the full report on the project webpage. Now I think we're going to move on to the last slide in the presentation today. So finally, there's lots of questions about existing septic systems, and those will remain in place while the earliest phases of the sewer system are constructed. To address that, we're providing an update today on a proposed septic mandatory maintenance program for the liquid waste management plan area. The Sewer Extension South LWMP addendum does include language in support of this program. So the program would help ensure septic systems are properly operated and maintained in accordance with current provincial sewage system regulation requirements. It will include mandatory inspections in high-risk areas, as well as mandatory pump outs in all areas. There is also support from the Electoral Area Services Committee for a region-wide septic mandatory maintenance program. So in order for this to move forward, the CVRD does require BC Cabinet approval. An order in council request is planned to be submitted to the province in summer 2024 with an assent vote or alternate approval process in 2025. And then program startup would be anticipated to begin in 2026. This program has been included in the draft addendum, and therefore if the province does approve the addendum, it could apply specifically to the plan area, even if the region-wide program does not proceed. So that is the end of the presentation slides we have for you today. I'd just like to thank you very much for your time, and I'm going to pass it back to Colleen, who will facilitate the question period, and we look forward to answering your questions today.
Thank you to Derry and James and Ron and Lucy for that overview and for all of that great information. I'll remind our participants today that we can answer your questions, and to share them with us, you can open up the Q&A window, which is in the bottom kind of black bar of your Zoom screen, and type in your questions there. I see one has come in that we'll get to in just a moment, but first I want to also share a slide that has the project webpage on it so that everybody can find it easily. So this is the project webpage at engagecomoxvalley.ca/sewer extension. You heard through the presentation a couple interesting backgrounders that are posted there. It's also a great resource to be able to follow along with the project progress, post questions to the project team that then can be responded to at any time. And feedback form also available there for this current stage and update to share your thoughts. So I'm going to leave that up for a moment while we dive into some of the first few questions that I'm seeing come through. And Derry, the first one is asks kind of why only the small part of Royston is included as part of phase 1A. Maybe that helps us explain just kind of how the areas were selected overall.
Yeah, certainly. Thanks, Colleen. Thank you for the question. So as I said, there was a need to limit the scope of phase 1A to keep per property costs reasonable and really maximize the benefit of the grant funds that were received. So the phase 1A Royston area was selected both because of its high environmental need. So it's an area that has, very small lots and a lot of older septic systems, as well as technical requirements, because that area has the pump station and some core infrastructure that's required to service the whole of the Royston area.
Great, thank you. And then the next question is about where the force main is expected to run when it is installed.
Yeah, certainly. So the preliminary design has the force main running along the Island Highway. However, during detailed design, we may also be looking at some alternate routes along the INM rail corridor where possible. And that'll be happening kind of during the next phase of design.
Great. And then there's a question about areas of high risk. So it's not clear about whether or not that's which homes or particular areas are at high risk in the current scenario or for construction. But maybe we can start with that first one. What areas are of particular high risk now, given kind of current wastewater management?
Yeah, I might actually hand that one over to Vince to speak a little bit about the high-risk areas, and I think maybe which high-risk areas are considered in the septic mandatory maintenance program that was discussed on that last slide.
Sure, yeah, thanks, Derry. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, in regards to the septic mandatory maintenance program, The areas identified as high risk, there's a couple of components that that went into that. The first was a GIS exercise several years ago looking at various characteristics of the electoral areas that included proximity to water courses, soil characteristics, depth to groundwater, and slope. Those are some key considerations in considering septic system risk. And then another consideration is lot size and density. So those areas that have higher density, even densities approaching what you would see in a fully serviced municipal area, those are considered higher risk areas as well. And that's generally one of the main reasons why we're focused on the core areas of Royston and Union Bay for sewer servicing, because those are essentially among the highest risk areas in the electoral areas.
Great. Tim, I'm not sure, I hope that answered your question, but please feel free to drop in a clarification if there was something more specific that you were looking for when you posted that question. Okay, and then the next question is a financial question. So it is asking about why the annual household costs that are covered over 25 years are called borrowing costs. So maybe Derry to Lucy, that language can be explained for people.
We're just what we've done there, for example, is I'll just remind everybody that the share for Union Bay and for Royston is that $4.2 million. So that's the share that the households in that phase 1A are contributing. So we've taken that $4.2 million and we will draw a debenture for it. So what that does is let us take advantage of some really great rates that we get to take advantage of as a local government through the Municipal Financing Authority. And we've spread that over 25 years. So we are borrowing that $4.2 million, and that translates to that annual amount that each household will be charged through your parcel tax annually, the $1,200 to the $1,500, just a range there. So it is borrowing that we're doing on through the CBRD. That then we're just collecting enough money to pay for the debt payment and the interest payment every year.
Great, thank you for that. Derry, I'll come back to you with the next question, which is about timelines beyond phase 1A. Do we have an estimate about when phase 1B properties would be expecting to connect?
Yeah, so at this time, we don't currently have an expected completion or even start of construction for phase 1B properties. We do know, however, it will be after that 2028 proposed construction deadline for phase 1A.
Okay. So that brings us to the end of the questions that are currently posted in the Q&A window. I'm just going to give that another moment in case anybody else has something on the tip of their tongue that they wanted to post. In the meantime, just once more, I'm going to share that slide that has the webpage so that people can reference it and make note of the webpage to be able to find additional information afterwards. Okay, and we have one more question that's come in. So the question is back to the question about high risk areas, sorry. So are high risk areas identified for mandatory inspection and pumping out outside of the South Sewer project? So is that expected to be kind of beyond the original project scope area for this one?
Yep, and I may get Vince's support on that one again.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, there are a handful of other areas in the CVRD electoral areas that have been identified for high risk, and that's hence the direction to proceed with developing a program that covers the entire rural areas of the CVRD rather than just focus on those areas that we're considering for the Sewer Extension South project. Great,
thank you. Sorry, Director Arbor, I see your hand raised. I'm wondering if that was just, if you wanted to connect in on that topic specifically.
Yes, I did. Thanks, Colleen. I'm just wondering if the report on the areas that are likely to be covered by the septic regulations is on the project page. That's something that people could look at if they want more details. Because I know there's areas, Hornby, Denman, Ships Point, and around Royston and Union Bay. But if people want that information, that's available on the website, or?
I don't believe it's on the website right now, but we can definitely make note and make sure that it is available there for reference following this presentation.
Thank you.
Okay. And then one other question that is in, and if, again, if anybody else wants to add one there, we still have some time to cover off any other things people want to talk about. And this one goes back to the finance and cost question, and it's about when the cost will actually kick in for people. So will they start paying at the start of the project, at the end of the project, or is there a set date that kicks in?
Thank you. As far as an exact date, at this moment in time, we don't have an exact date, but what I can say is that what we do is that we will use any reserves or grant dollars up first. So we won't draw that debt until later on into the project, and it's not until we bring that in as that piece of funding will we then proceed to have the cost come through on parcel taxes in order to be able to collect enough money to pay for that debt servicing. So in summary, very much close to the time when closer to the time when construction is well underway and to that tail end of the project.
Great, and we're still, another question has popped in about costs as well, and it's whether or not we expect that the costs for phase 1B will be the same or different as it is expected to be for the phase 1A properties.
I'll say a few words, and maybe Derry can have something more to add. We've been asked that question a lot, and at this point in time, we don't know what those costs are going to look like. It's really hard to predict. That's from my perspective. I don't know if you want to add, Derry.
Yeah, I just want to add that we certainly will be looking to maintain fairness between phase 1A and future project phases in order to create as much equity for system participants as possible. And so this will likely look like securing additional grant dollars or partnership funding in order to support these future phases.
Great. Okay. Well, once again, we've come to an empty question Q&A box. So I think I will leave it there unless I see any kind of last minute questions pop in. Before I let you go, just a couple reminders. We'll be posting the recording of this webinar onto the project webpage. Again, that's engagecomoxvalley.ca/sewer extension. That's also a really great reference for you for all the background information we've talked about, and a good place for you to be able to post questions if you have any that come to mind after we've hung up today. We thank you all again, the panelists for being here to present and to help answer the questions that came in from the public, and to our attendees today for joining us to learn the latest about this project. We have another open house on Wednesday in Royston, and we welcome you to attend or to share the information with others, neighbors and friends that you think might be interested. So with that, thank you to everybody for joining us today, and we wish you a good rest of your afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.